Today, we're chatting about a topic that we are seeing consistently across organizations right now. AI access alone does not create productivity. Many organizations already have AI available, but they're not seeing meaningful results yet. The difference comes down to one thing: how teams are actually using it in their day-to-day work. Today, we will walk you through where Copilot is creating real impact across Microsoft 365 and where we see organizations unlocking meaningful productivity gains. While many AI solutions are generalist AI assistants, Microsoft 365 Copilot is the AI brand family built for work. Reduce time spent on work, email, meetings, reports, accelerate output creation for documents, presentations, analysis, improve decision making, insights from data, enables employees to focus on high value work, strategy, customers, growth. Here's our agenda for the next 30 minutes. We will start by looking at the productivity challenges organizations face today and why AI access alone is not enough. Then we will see practical examples of Copilot across the Microsoft apps your teams already use every day. Finally, we'll talk about where to start and how to scale for real business impact. The productivity reality. Let us start with the reality most teams are facing today. Work has not slowed down, it has increased materially. Most teams are dealing with more meetings, more email, more systems, and more data. And at the same time, capacity has not increased at the same pace. So productivity is not about working harder anymore, it's about working differently. This is the key message I want to anchor on. AI access does not equal business impact. Organizations only see value when AI changes how work actually happens. We have seen organizations deploy AI broadly and still struggle to see measurable value. I'm sure some of you have had coworkers who have said, great, can we start using this AI tool or that AI tool? But what impact is it really making? The difference is this: productivity does not come from having AI, it comes from where and how it is applied in real work. It's how teams use it that matters. The shift is from tool usage to workflow transformation. So we have access, then there's usage, and there's outcomes. So where does productivity actually come from? What is the real driver of productivity? It does not come from people working faster. It comes from removing friction. Less time searching for information, less manual work, fewer handoffs between teams, faster decisions. When you reduce that friction, that is when you start to see meaningful productivity gains. And this is exactly what Copilot is designed to do. That is my day every day. It's like so much information, and I want to find where did I find that price list, or where did I get that information I shared out with the team on how to do a process. There's so much information coming in. I've got some really great examples of how we can use Copilot to get through that, make our day a lot more enjoyable. So there's a value gap. Capacity is the new currency. What is the most valuable thing Copilot can give you? It's time. No FTE increases, just capacity. And that kind of puts it in that graphic there. It explains exactly what you're striving for that impact. And over to you, Aaron.
Thanks, Tracy. I wanted to take a little bit of time to clarify what it is meant by Copilot, not just from Encore's perspective, but our interpretation of what Copilot is from Microsoft's perspective. It's not necessarily just one product. We kind of liken it to a bit of a platform that exists across the entire Microsoft ecosystem, but it's almost not quite that either. And so I wanted to spend a little time walking through our interpretation of what that is, because I think it's helpful for clients to kind of understand that viewpoint and how Microsoft thinks about copilots. So we can go to next, Tracy. So part of how Microsoft looks at Copilot is, again, less like a product, and maybe even a little bit less like a platform, and more of a well, they call it a brand family. So a number of different ways in which you can engage Copilot, and based on the type of application that you're using to access it. So when we kind of segregate it, we segregate it to the ins, the fors, and then the actual products themselves. So and you can kind of get a sense as to what the Copilot is going to do based on how it's referred, or how Microsoft refers to it. So, for example, in that first column, the in product are Copilots are effectively an embedded set of features that is typically licensed within the product that you already have licensed. So, for example, Copilot in Excel or in Word uh, come with your Word licensing, or with your Excel licensing, or Power BI licensing, and then you have ways in which you can engage it. Typically the top right, although sometimes it's moved. I think it might be down to the bottom now, where you can engage with that Copilot right within the application that you're using. So again, those are typically the free ones, and they are relatively basic and easy to use. Doesn't require any training necessarily. Then you have the next set, which is Copilot 4. And that could be for typically the Dynamics 365 platform. So we see a Copilot for sales, customer service, for finance. Typically, these ones are also included within the licensing, but you do have to kind of add them manually to it, versus the in Copilots, which just sort of come with the application. The 4 Copilots are usually ones that you've got to turn on effectively, and for the most part, those are also included with the licenses of the D365 application that you've got. There may be some nuances to whether those are billed. They, as you can imagine, with Copilot and AI being relatively new, there's a lot of change that happens pretty frequently, and a lot of that is in and around licensing for these applications. But for the most part, we've seen these ones as included with your Dynamics licensing. And then there's finally the named products, and for the most part, these are purchased either by the application itself or by user. Although there's a little bit of a way to engage with some of those Copilots without having to purchase a license. So these applications, which you individually license and start to use. On that first one, the Microsoft 365 Copilot, that is a per user license. However, there is a way that you can start experimenting before committing to purchasing Microsoft 365 Copilot, and that's by using the free version, which is called Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, which has some limited functionality, but it allows you to do a little bit of experimentation in and around what that Copilot can do for you. And from an end user's perspective, or a general employee's perspective, that Microsoft 365 Copilot tends to be the most pervasive SKU or license that organizations will purchase in order to engage with AI within the Microsoft realm. We can go to the next one. So we've talked about Copilots, but we haven't talked about the difference or segregation between what Copilot does and what agents do, and what's that sort of relationship. So in general, if you think about Copilot as the brand, there's typically a one-to-one relationship between the employee and the Copilot. So while I did say that there's a lot of different kind of Copilots, largely the experience that you have with Copilot is the same regardless of which one of those Copilots, or however you're accessing Copilot. It's a singular experience typically. Copilot works like a personal assistant almost. It's grounded in the work content, like your email and meetings and documents. So again, think of that Copilot as being aligned to the individual. When you shift your mentality onto agents, it's largely aligning an agent to a specific business process. And we do see that a lot of business process are being transformed and actioned by agents. There's all levels of complexity of agents as well, and they can work together to kind of orchestrate work to perform a specific business process or series of business processes as well. They You can build them yourself. You can get your partner to build them. You can get pre-built agents from Microsoft as well. And largely the way that those agents interact with you is through that Copilot interface. Although you likely have many agents that could be working for you on your behalf. The other thing I would surface as a concept in and around agents is, because they're operating a very specific function or set of work, you can almost give them names like you would give a job title, although a very, very narrow job title. And I think if you think about it that way, you almost think of these agents like micro employees, and that'll become kind of important when we get into some of the later discussion in and around security. Okay, you can go to the next, Tracy. And one other way I think is kind of nice to articulate, Copilot versus agents and artificial intelligence in general, is that Copilot is the UI for AI. It's the gateway to be able to access not just those agents, but any large language model that you may want to be accessing in order to generate an output through your Copilot. So I think that's probably the best way to kind of think about the interaction between agents and the AI that's out there on the web, and the actual Copilot, which is really largely your gateway or your interface to it. Yeah, and I think the rest we're going to talk about later in terms of security. So I'll hold my comments when we get back to me a little bit later. So Tracy, back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. I had to turn my mic off there, or turn it back on, talking away. All right. Thanks, Aaron. Microsoft Copilot consistently delivers 20 to 30% productivity gains by eliminating low-value tasks like email, meetings, and reporting, freeing employees to focus on revenue, customers, and strategic work. Now let's look at some practical examples. This is where the presentation becomes tangible. I want to show you how Copilot shows up in the tools your team uses every day. So already using these tools, and as Aaron was showing you, that in some of the applications, Copilot is just there. But if you want to have the more robust Copilot, there is the Microsoft 365 Copilot that'll even heighten your productivity. So most organizations start here with Microsoft 365. Copilot shows up in the tools your team already uses every day. In Outlook, it drafts responses and summarizes email threads. In Teams, it summarizes conversations, captures action items, and generates meeting recaps. In Word and PowerPoint, it helps create polished content with rough ideas. And through Copilot Chat, it gives you instant access to knowledge across your work environment. This is where you start to see early productivity wins. This is especially helpful when you're onboarding new employees. So for example, you want consistency in our language on how we communicate with either suppliers or customers or with a staff. Again, it just provides you that ability to create content that is consistent with the voice of the organization, as well as you're looking back at information. So meeting recaps, maybe, we all get invited to a lot of meetings. We want to be able to see what happened, or maybe I got distracted during a meeting, so I can ask what was the last question, or what were we talking about in this meeting, so I can catch up. So there's just really endless possibilities of how you can deploy this and create that value to your organizations and your teams. It also creates your employees just feel so much more productive, and that job, the enjoyment of their job just increases tenfold because they don't have to do so much work anymore. They've got that assistant that they've always wanted. One of the simplest but most impactful examples is meetings. Think about how much time is spent catching up, reading notes, reviewing chats, following threads. Copilot removes that. It summarizes meetings, captures action items, highlights decisions. So instead of spending 30 to 60 minutes catching up, it takes a few minutes. So again, we can eliminate that meeting overload. There's summaries, creates action items, decisions are captured. You don't have to keep rereading those threads. So turn 60 minutes into 5 minutes. It's often one of the highest ROI use cases we see. It's clear, measurable productivity gain that you can share with your colleagues. Another area where teams see immediate impact is content creation. Presentations, reports, proposals, emails, these things take time. Copilot accelerates that process. Instead of starting from a blank page, you start with a draft, then refine it. That shift from creation to refinement is where the real time savings comes in, and compresses the time from thinking to communicating, from idea to output faster. So that's for presentations, reports, proposals, and emails. It also provides that consistency. So if maybe we're launching a product, or we're carrying out a series of content of events, maybe we're doing some internal communications to staff, or something that's going outside of our four walls, we can make sure that we don't have conflicting messages or conflicting information. There's like continuity and consistency of everything that we're doing. And easier to find, not all looking, where do we save that document? What we see across organizations is a consistent pattern. They start with individual productivity. So again, we've got that, what helping me, for example, in whether I'm looking at an email, or I'm creating a document, or I'm responding to other requests for information. That's my personal productivity. So they start with individual productivity, meeting recaps, email drafting, content creation, then they improve team collaboration and responsiveness. And ultimately they move into process automation with agents, which we've been talking about. The organization that reached the third layer are the ones seeing the most significant ROI. So again, it is going to be in a journey, it's going to be an evolution, and you're going to start where it's manageable. This is a great graphic because it shows you the different levels. So we have that my personal assistant. So what am I working on? How is that going to impact my day-to-day work life? Then I've got my team. What tools can we use from that work family to create more productivity from a team perspective? And then that process productivity. So talking about agents, building agents that specifically handle a process within your organization. So I really like this graphic because it really explains to everyone, great, it's not just Copilot for you as an individual within the organization, but all the way through teams and the business overall as a whole. So employees using Microsoft 365 Copilot are saving significant time on routine tasks. Evidence shows that each user can reclaim 1 to 4 hours per week on average. So again, when we think about that, if we take that and quantify that out, and again, we've got all different types of employees that are compensated different ways. But even, for example, at the low end, if you're saving $500 per employee in productivity per month, it's well worth that investment. So there are some metrics that you can take away and build that business case. All right, over to you,
Okay.
Aaron.
Yep. Back to me. So in almost every conversation that we have about Copilot and AI, the concept of security and governance kind of comes up. And I did mention a little bit earlier that there is a bit of a segregation between agents and Copilot usage. And so I wanted to kind of highlight a couple of the tools that the IT element of your organization would have access to in order to ensure that the usage of AI within the Microsoft world is appropriate. Let's say. So on the first front, in order to manage the agents, Microsoft has an application called Microsoft Agent 365 that enables you to do the kind of things that you see up on the slide there. So observe, govern, and secure. Copilot, we'll see on the next slide, has effectively the same types of things, but basically what the Microsoft Agent 365 will allow you to do, and again, remember I kind of likened an agent to a micro employee because it's running a process. You almost have to treat it as such when it comes down to how you monitor them, how you put the guardrails on them, and how you secure the information that they are accessing and outputting. So through this, you can, number one, see all your agents in your environment and understand where and how they're being used, monitor them in real time. Through things like the agent registry, maps, analytics, and role-based views. You can also put structure and guardrails around those agents, from onboarding, lifecycle management of the agent, and access to integration governance. So agents are managed intentionally, and you can stay audit ready as you scale, because you can get into situations where you will want external or other individuals in the organization understanding what these agents are exactly doing. And then ultimately protecting every agent across the entire enterprise. So controlling its access, securing data, and defending it against external threats, just like you do for your current users and applications today. We can go next. And so the Copilot, which is a slightly different structure, has the same, again, elements. So first that security and governance. We're going to go into that in a fair bit of detail on the next slide. But ultimately, it's secured within Microsoft's security trust boundary. So inherently, you've got Microsoft's overlay in terms of securing what Copilot is doing and what it has access to. That is provided by Microsoft. Second is the management controls. So while technology enables people to create what they need at work, Microsoft also has built some tools to help you manage that, we call it AI sprawl within the organization, ensuring that the right people have access to the right tools and are using them as they're intended to be used. And then finally, the third is measurement and reporting. So that helps you understand and track usage and adoption, as well as the business impact of Copilot within the organization. And it's also called Copilot Analytics. So we can go to the next and final one for me. So to kind of dig in a little bit more in detail on that security and governance front, Microsoft provides some tools so that you can specifically assess things like oversharing risks by getting visibility into content that may be overshared. I think Tracy's got some links on the final slide to assist you in developing, say, a blueprint for addressing oversharing as a concept. But some key things in that oversharing category that it'll allow you to do is use reports and dashboards to identify content that may have been shared too broadly, fix excessive permissions using policy recommendations from that oversharing report, and then optionally prevent Copilot from processing or referencing sensitive files using that report as well. Another thing that on the security and governance front is the protection against data loss and insider risks. So reviewing how users are interacting with Microsoft 365 Copilot, have the system give you alerts if there's risky behavior occurring, such as things like unethical usage or copyright violations, or attempts to access, say, large volumes of sensitive data. You can protect sensitive files. So Copilot responses and Copilot created files will inherit the protections of the file that it is accessing or not allowed to access. So if you put security in and around the files and data at the source level, that will not be necessarily used or seen by an individual who is running a process in Copilot. So they can't just simply get around their own security access by using Copilot. Copilot adopts the security access of the files as well as the user within the Microsoft tenant. And then the other element of this one is dynamically apply security policies based on risky actions. So for example, if a user performs a series of Copilot actions that indicate a high level of risk, it can automatically add them to more strict security policies until someone maybe goes and takes a look at it and can free that up to ensure that it was not being used maliciously. And then finally, govern AI use to meet regulatory or regulations and policies. So visibility into Copilot interaction texts, linked files, audit entries for Copilot interactions. Copilot interactions are included in the admin search results. So for investigations or compliance purposes or potential ethical violations and litigation reasons, that is tracked and can be available if needed. So you can begin monitor the usage of how your people are using Copilot. And then manage the life cycle of Copilot prompts and responses alongside all of your Microsoft 365 data. So you can put Copilot prompts and responses on legal hold, for example, if you're seeing some potential misuse of Copilot there. So you've got an amazing amount of assistance and tools that you can use to really, dial in the usage of Copilot for your organization. Back to you, Tracy.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. That was really important because that question comes up a lot, is like people want to know what is the security around Microsoft AI and Microsoft Copilot. So thank you, Aaron, for giving us some insight into that. It's fantastic. Awesome. Okay, well, we're coming to the end. Getting started. All right, brought this graphic up again. Again, that's hitting home for you. Those are things that you do every day. That's a great place to start. Aaron mentioned prompts, so I wanted to talk a little bit about prompts. Prompts are the key. So again, think about this. If you're going to go build a house and you just said, build me a house, well, no one's going to know what you want, right? So again, a good prompt contains goal, context, expectations, and source. So Copilot prompts are instructions or questions you use to tell Copilot what you want. So a good prompt is going to get good results. A vague prompt is not going to give you what you want, and we don't want users to get frustrated with that. We want to make sure that they understand how to construct a good prompt. So Copilot is built upon large language models that are connected to your Microsoft 365 apps and data. With Copilot, you can go beyond what you can do with other LLM-powered chatbots by getting data from Microsoft 365 apps and your internal data, such as articles, reports, emails, presentations, and more. So with Copilot, you can create or edit content, ask questions, summarize information, and catch up on things. So there's catch up. What questions were asked during the meeting, or what ideas were presented? Create, I want to create a PowerPoint about time management. Also edit. You can go in and say rewrite with Copilot, or add an image. If you're in PowerPoint, you want to add an image of target with arrows. So one of the prompts I use every day, so I've got it scheduled, and it's my chief of staff. And it basically tells me, since I had my last update, what emails have come in, what its top priorities, what meetings I have, what things have been completed, so tasks that have been completed, what tasks are outstanding, what needs my attention. It gives me ideas when I'm going into meetings about questions I should be asking in those meetings, or getting feedback on certain things. I love it, and it's called the chief of staff prompt. And if anybody wants it, let me know. I'm happy to share it out. It's very cool. So we're going to get started. So this is for those of you who have not been in. I'm just in the Copilot app itself, and that's just a screenshot of it, so you can see all the things you can do. There's actually a little graphic there of Dumpy. That's an agent that's an Encore built agent. There's a researcher, which is very cool, an analyst, create. These are all tools that you can use, and there's a whole bunch there's a prompt library. You can grab prompts from there. But I'll get back to what I should have been saying. The organizations succeeding with AI are not trying to do everything at once. They start small. They focus on one high value use case for a specific role or process. They measure the outcome, time saved, quality improved, or a specific business KPI. Then they expand intentionally based on what works. Change management matters. Copilot is not just a tool, it's a new way of working. Without adoption and process alignment, the value will be limited. So again, if we give the tool, we want to make sure that our team members understand how to use it and how it's going to make their life more productive. So again, we want to be very intentional with that. The dashboard's very helpful as well, because then you're going to see what's going on. So assess how prepared your organization is to deploy Copilot, monitor which users are actively using Copilot features across the apps like Teams, Word, and Outlook, evaluate the effectiveness of Copilot in improving productivity, including estimated time or financial savings, understand employee engagement and feedback related to AI usage, and there's pre-configured Power BI dashboards and customizable queries to analyze over 100 Copilot measures. So lots of things to assist you on your journey. So let's bring this back to what matters most, the return on your investment. AI should deliver measurable business value, not just productivity in theory. Across the customers we work with, the ROI from Microsoft 365 Copilot shows up in 3 consistent ways. First, time returned to employees, hours saved each week on email, meetings, and reporting that can be reinvested into higher value work. Accelerated outcomes, faster content creation, faster decisions, and faster cycle times across sales, service, and operation, and then business impact. So again, this is why we frame Copilot as an investment in how your people work, not simply another tool to deploy. Our goal is to help you measure that value clearly, scale what works, and ensure every dollar invested translates into outcomes your business can see. Building on the ROI story, let's look at the proof points we are seeing across organizations adopting Microsoft 365 Copilot today. I know I'm running out of time, I gotta hurry up. So let's bring it all together, and you'll have this obviously afterwards. AI access alone does not create productivity. Productivity comes from removing friction in the flow of work. Copilot helps people work better. Agents help processes run better, and the key is starting with real high impact use cases. The value gap is not about buying more software, it's about using what you already have differently. All right, I'll leave you with this thought. The gap organizations are facing today is not a software gap, it's a value gap. And that gap comes down to using what you already have differently. The next step is to identify a high impact use case for your team and get started. Encore is here to assist you, and we continue to post content and host events to ensure you get more out of the most valuable commodity, time. Thank you, and we're happy to open it up to questions. Got lots of additional resources here. So you'll get the links for that. Yeah, go ahead,
No,
Katie.
I was just gonna say that's awesome. Thank you, Tracy. For everyone in the audience, I will be sharing this list with you along with the recording early next week. So you'll be getting this, and these are all, I believe, clickable links, so you can use that. As we are at time, and I know Erin had to jump, but if anyone does have any questions, you can throw them in the question box. And like I said, we'll get back to you by email later today. Tracy, if you have a few minutes, I want to share this video. We can go ahead and do that.
Sure, we're running.
Okay.
Copilot is revolutionizing our creative workflows.
It's helping us reimagine a company. It's been in business for years.
Copilot for Microsoft 365 helps us move faster.
It makes us more agile in really finding the right information.
Microsoft Copilot gives our employees more power, more freedom to focus on our mission, health for all and hunger for none.
Copilot now is helping us tell the story behind the data.
It is automating, it is prompting, it is imagining, it is creating.
Copilot gives our people the gift of time. If we can give our sellers back 4 hours a week, it's worth $50 million in annual revenue, and that is math that matters.
It's not a question if you should adopt Copilot, but when, and I can give you the answer to when. It's now.